What's going on, guys? Sportfanatic, and I'm back with another schedule preview, this time of the Washington Huskies. So Washington has been basically carrying the Pac-12 over the past couple years. They were the last Pac-12 team to make it into the playoffs back in 2016. And can they do it again this year? Are they going to continue carrying the Pac-12? I'm not sure if they are going to carry the Pac-12, but I think nobody's going to doubt the fact that they will be in the conversation for Pac-12 champions coming at the end of the year. So they did lose some defensive stars, which is a minor setback, but they did retain some nice offensive players, and they have another one added to their roster in Jacob Eason. He had to redshirt last year, but Jacob Eason is a good player. He showed a lot of flashes in his freshman year at Georgia. And if he wouldn't have gotten injured, we could be talking about one of the top QBs in the country now. Jacob Eason could maybe have a national title under his belt. So Jacob Eason has caught a lot of bad breaks, but he did catch a good break in landing at Washington. This is a great situation for him. Of course, they have Justin Herbert in that conference, and I'm very high on him. But Jacob Eason is primed and ready to take that conference by the horns, led by, in my opinion, the most complete team in the Pac-12 in the Washington Huskies. So will Jacob Eason rise to the occasion and make amends for that time missed at Georgia? Let's find out. So Washington starts off their schedule against another fellow Washington team, not on the level that they are, Eastern Washington. I don't really think I'd spend much time on this. Obviously, Washington is going to get the win there. So they open up Pac-12 play at home against Cal. Cal has been in the dumps for the past couple years, and I think they will be for years heading forward. They should be better than what they are, but they're just not. They're just not really invested in football. They're more of an academic school, let's be real. They're not hugely invested in sports. They focus on academics. They're just a really good school in a really good state. So whenever you think of the University of Cal, you don't really think of sports. You think of good school with a lot of stuff to do. So they're just not really a sports school. Washington certainly is, and Washington, I think, gets the win. So they face Hawaii, who has not been good since the 2009 days, I believe, whenever they were in the Sugar Bowl. I think it was 2009. They were in the Sugar Bowl that year. They haven't been good since then. They're just not you wouldn't expect a program like Hawaii to be a great program. I mean, recruiting's tough. There's not a lot of talent out there, but there are some, some quarterbacks like Tua, Marcus Mariota, but none of them want to go to Hawaii. That's not a football power, and it's so sectioned off that it's easy to spot talent, and the big boys like Alabama, Georgia, Clemson, Ohio State are going to come in there and cherry pick their guy out of Hawaii, leaving you with basically nothing. So Hawaii, in terms of talent, is very top heavy just for the state, and the top heaviness gets picked out by the Southern powers, leaving Hawaii with nothing. Washington gets the win. So they are on the road against BYU. BYU is kind of a dark horse team. They have a chance to play spoiler for a lot of teams, like Tennessee and Washington are just two of the teams that BYU will have a chance to be spoilers for. But does that mean that I'm going to give Washington the loss? No, but I wouldn't be surprised if this is actually a very close game. Washington faces USC after this, so this is kind of a sandwich game. So BYU is a team to be very taken seriously. They're a very solid team that can compete with some Power 5 teams. But in the end, I think Washington has the more talented team, obviously, so Washington's going to get the win. So they are at home against USC. I think USC is going to be pretty awful this season. I think they're probably going to fire Clay Helton about halfway through the year and then hire Urban Meyer once the year concludes. This is just a rebuilding year, an off year for USC. They're not going to be very good. Washington is going to be quite good, in my opinion, so Washington gets the win. So here's where I think it starts to get to the losable games. This stretch of 3 games is very losable. They are on the road against Stanford. I'm a big believer in Stanford. They're pretty good every year. They're never a team that you can take lightly. They're always a top 25, top 20, top 15 program. David Shaw has done a fabulous job there. He has taken a program that has so many scholarship limitations and made it into a regional and national power. Applause to David Shaw. He's done a fabulous job there. and I'm going to give Stanford the win for one simple reason. It's on the road, and Washington, this will be their first big test of the season, and I'm not sure they will be ready for it. Stanford gets the win. So they are now on the road against Arizona. I think they're going to respond well. This is a sandwich game between their two most difficult games of the season against Oregon and Stanford, so they could lose, but I think they're going to come off the loss to Stanford, and they're going to respond well against Arizona. I think they're going to get the win, and quite convincingly, trying to build that momentum and recapture their season as they head into arguably their toughest game of the season. It's between the Oregon game and the Stanford game for their toughest game of the season. So I'm going to give Washington the win over Arizona. So they are at home against Oregon. Both teams, I think by this point, will definitely have a loss. I think Oregon will probably have a loss to... I'm not sure if they face Stanford early in this, so both teams are going to be in must-win mode. But Washington, I think, is going to find a way to get the win. I think Washington's the more complete team than Oregon. Yes, Oregon does have the better quarterback in Justin Herbert. I think this could be a very fun game to watch with Jacob Eason and Justin Herbert, two strong-arm quarterbacks throwing 50-yard bombs from the pocket. It should be a fun game to watch. I'm looking forward to this game. But I think Washington's going to get the win just because they are simply the more complete team, and it's at home. So I think those elements will give Washington the win. So they are off a bye against Utah in a Pac-12 championship rematch. I think Utah is going to have a dip from last year. I think last year is kind of lightning in a bottle. They caught a lot of breaks and won a lot of close games. And Washington is coming off of a bye. They're at home. That's not a very good spot for Utah. Washington's going to come in with a great game plan. They're going to execute it. I'm going to give Washington the win over Utah, and a very, very underrated win for Washington, in my opinion. So they are now on the road against the worst team in the Pac-12. I don't want to hear Cal. I don't want to hear any of that. Oregon State, at this point, is the worst team in the Pac-12. They're just not really... I mean, you're in the same state with Oregon, and Oregon is such a power in that state. It's really hard to succeed if you're a team like Oregon State. I don't blame them for being as bad as they are. Obviously, I would like them to be, maybe around 5-7, 6-6, but it is completely understandable why they are so bad and why they continue to be bad and why they will be bad for the next couple of years, in my opinion. They're in the same state as Oregon. They're not winning the recruiting battle. In fact, they're getting absolutely crushed. Oregon continues to put together top 10, top 15 class year after year after year after year, leaving Oregon State with a bunch of 3 stars and 2 stars. And in the Pac-12, you can't really do anything with that. So I'm going to give Washington the win. They're the much better team. So they have another bye week, and they return on the road against Colorado. Colorado really isn't anything special, and Washington has a bye week, so they're not going to be looking ahead to Washington State just yet. I think Washington is the much more complete team with the better quarterback. And sorry, Colorado, but I'm not going to really give you guys much of a chance. I don't really think you have the edge over Washington really at all, so I'm going to give Washington the win over Colorado. I just think they're the better team. They're coming off of a bye, and it's not an ideal spot for Colorado to be in. So they end off the year at home against Washington State. Washington State was in the driver's seat to be Pac-12 champions last year, for Washington knocked them off. Washington State's going to be looking for revenge, but they lost their quarterback. They lost their star quarterback, Gardner Minshew, and I just don't think they're going to be as good this year. I think they're going to dip off, and Washington is the much more complete team. I feel like Washington State last year was kind of a fluke, and over the past couple of years, they've had some pretty solid quarterbacks, such as Matt Luke and Gardner Minshew, but they don't have Gardner Minshew, my bad. But they don't have that quarterback this year, and without that quarterback, I'm not really going to give them much of a chance against Washington, so Washington gets the win to end off the year 11-1. So I have Washington going 11-1 on the year. I'm not sure exactly which game they're going to lose, whether it's Oregon or Stanford. I am assuming they're probably going to split those games. I don't really see them winning both of those games, but then again, I certainly don't see them losing both as well. So I'm assuming they're going to split that game, and maybe they drop some random game across the year. I don't really see it happening, but you never know in college football. So Washington has been a Pac-12 powerhouse over the past couple years. I think they're going to do the same this year. I think they have a legit possibility to make the playoffs, led by the arm of Jacob Eason. So the question is for Washington, Jake Browning was always a solid to good quarterback. Can Jacob Eason be good to great? That's the question on the table for Washington. If Washington wants to get over the hump of Pac-12 power to college football power, they're going to need that to happen this year with Jacob Eason, and I think it will to a degree. Nothing insane, but I think for the most part, Jacob Eason will be an improvement over Jake Browning with his incredible arm talent. I do think there will be growing pains, considering he hasn't started in forever, but I do think he will get things rolling, especially after that Stanford game, and Washington will ride that momentum to the end of the year and maybe to a college football playoff berth. And hey, you never know, maybe even to a national title game. I may be putting a lot of hype on this team, but they have the potential to fulfill it, and I think they have a good possibility to do that. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This might be one of my final schedule previews. It might even be the last. I'm not sure. If you guys really want to see one more or two more, let me know which team down in the comments below. I'll make sure to do that. We're kind of transitioning into the summer to school starting up again. College football starts in less than a month. There's not really more things that you can do for college football hype. You're starting to focus more on individual games, starting to make more predictions, and the college football season is slowly making its way to our television screen. So I hope you guys have an amazing day. Make sure to subscribe, and peace.